Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast, episode 99. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Ani.
How are you?
Here we are.
Here we are.
Episode 99?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and before we get started, I just want to give a big shout out to our listeners and watchers of the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast. We are so fortunate to have such an amazing community. We're getting letters every week now talking about
letters,
like emails.
Okay. I was like, people are mailing letters? I haven't seen the letters.
If you're listening, mail us a letter. just so we can have that.
Emails?
Mail.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a child.
Comments.
I'm a child of the 80s. So
exactly. Messages. Yeah, we're getting all that stuff.
Yeah. Messages, comments, emails, text messages. Messages are a virtual community from people who are being impacted by the podcast. Not so much these crazy introductions, but the content is really speaking to them. And we really appreciate you listening. And it definitely fuels us to bring you more episodes and more interesting information for you to consider in your life. So thank you so much.
And certainly, you know, the conversations that we have with people out in the world, and some of those conversations happen through those emails and through those messages, but also through our interactions with our students and with our private clients and people we meet at conferences. Like the topics that people bring up are the topics that then we talk about here on the podcast.
Like today.
So it's really, so these conversations, this connection, this communication is really vital to continuing kind of the circulation of goodness. Because oftentimes we have a really great conversation with someone, really help someone to move through something challenging. And we really try to bring that energy back into the podcast and then put it forth in such a way where it can serve more people.
I was having a call with a client just the other day who said, hey, would you talk about this thing on the podcast? And we're actually going to talk about it, I think, next week. But don't forget, you can submit a question. So if you go to our website and you go to the podcast homepage, which you can get to from the public library. So how do you do that? You go to the website, you join the public library, log in, public library is right in there, and you can go to the podcast homepage and submit a question. We're so excited to get your questions and answer them on the podcast. So you can do that anytime you want.
Yep. Awesome. So this week's topic, based on a question that we got from someone, is why is it so hard to be happy?
I'm really glad we're talking about this because I think that this is a question on so many people's minds, Brian, clients, students, and it may be something that people say to me just flat out. But it also, I think, it's like an underlying question that people ask themselves, even if they're not consciously aware or that they're, asking us. It's a question that they're asking themselves a lot. So I'm really glad we're talking about this one.
You know, the only kind of person or people that this isn't a question for are cats. Cats, I don't think our cat ever asked the question, why is it so hard to be happy?
So is that because you think he's always happy or because he's always grumpy? Because we think he's always grumpy.
I think he's pretty adept at controlling his environment and not really caring what other people think about him.
Yeah, definitely.
So foreshadowing, maybe that's actually okay, cats. What we can learn
like a cat.
What can we learn from cats?
Yes.
Okay, so why is it so hard to be happy? I think you're right, Ani. I think that's a question a lot of people ask themselves. I think it's something that whether we are consciously aware of it or not, a lot of people are striving for more happiness.
Absolutely.
Or have an expectation that they should be happier.
Or even 100% happiness.
Yep.
That's definitely an unconscious expectation I think a lot of people have. And I think it's really perpetuated by our use of technology and media nowadays because I was pumping gas and a TV screen came up and started talking to me, right at the gas
Yeah,
pump.
I
And
hate that.
I do,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I do too. Well, I was thinking to myself, God, can't get away from it. Like, right? We got the phones in our pockets and the TVs and the computers and all of these things that we can turn off. But then you go out in the world to the bank, to the mall, to the gas station. There's just media
Mm,
everywhere inundating us. And media is oftentimes showing us a polarized life experience. So
right.
I think that it has definitely persuaded our expectations of life that we should be happier more often than we are.
Okay. Yeah. No,
So I think that's one of the reasons why it's this persistent question is because people are constantly getting inundated with media that says
right.
you'd be happy if.
Yeah. And actually, the interesting other side of that too is that oftentimes from media, we get really kind of threatening information about the world, right?
Definitely.
So, on one hand, to your point, you can look at it, social media or media, and see images of people living, quote unquote, their amazing lives and that they're full of happiness and joy. And then in the very next ad that we get or the very next story that we get, we hear about devastation and loss and those kinds of things. And it really ends up kind of just, it's like a roller coaster.
It
It's really a
really
roller
is.
coaster for our emotional well-being. And of course, the information that all the information that we're soaking up is what informs our perceptions, our decisions, and our behaviors.
Hmm.
So we're always we're kind of in some ways like the way humans function is we're always considering the information that we get.
Right.
No matter what source it comes from,
Yeah.
it's coming in, and then we do something with it.
Yeah.
So
And the subconscious doesn't really know what's real or imagined. So your subconscious starts reacting to stuff. And media is designed to polarize
mm,
us, like you're talking about. It's designed to get an emotional response out of us. And so I think it really is worthy of consideration. All the numbers and statistics tell us we're more depressed and more anxious and more stressed and all that than we ever have been. But this topic of, how can I be happier? Well, one of the things is considering what we're consuming all the time. And there's things that are harder for us to turn our ears or our eyes off to nowadays because it's really all around. So having some perspective, I think, on that is it's just it's harder,
mm,
and we
yeah.
have to be more aware
For
than in the
sure.
past.
For sure. So whenever we start a podcast like this and we're talking about something like happy or happiness,
To look up the
we
definitions.
got to go to Oxford here,
Okay.
right? We got to go to Oxford because it's like, what are we actually talking about?
Uh-huh.
I just kind of like to just make sure we're all on the same page because sometimes you're talking about something, well, that's not what I thought happiness was. Or I
Right.
think about happiness, not to make anybody right or wrong or about any of this, but I just like to kind of
Well,
bring us
nice.
back to what's the actual agreed upon
Yeah.
definition of
You've
happy,
definitely
right?
got me curious
Okay,
now.
so here's some definitions from the Oxford
Okay.
Dictionary. So the first one is feeling or showing pleasure or contentment,
Okay.
which I think is kind of interesting.
Why?
Just that word contentment, neurophysiologically, when we talk about like our neurohormones, two primary ones that we deal with are dopamine and serotonin.
Right.
And I'm often curious when I think about happiness, do people actually relate the sensations of happiness with something that's more like revved up, like a more of a dopamine type feeling,
Oh yeah,
right?
sure.
But what this definition is saying is a feeling of showing pleasure or contentment. And contentment is definitely a word that matches more of a serotonin type
Right.
experience, right? Where the two differences of those two, we've done other podcasts on these, but dopamine says yes and give me more. And serotonin says yes and I've had enough kind of thing, right? So you're satiated. And so that's more that kind of that sense of contentment. So I'm just kind of playing with that a little bit. When I read that definition, I was like, oh, interesting.
Well, those two words don't really strike me as experiences that people have together a lot. Like pleasure, sure, contentment, sure, but pleasure and contentment, I think that's a pretty rare
Okay.
experience.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's one of the definitions for happy or happiness from Oxford.
Sure.
So I'm just
Yeah, I
thinking
think
that,
that's
right?
very
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so the second definition, again, in Oxford, is having a sense of confidence in or satisfaction with a person, arrangement, or situation.
Satisfaction and contentment seem very similar
So
to
there we
me.
go, right? So we're right back to that kind of the serotonin type experience with happiness or happy, right? So I'm just kind of I thought it was interesting. That's why I wanted kind of to bring these definitions because again, oftentimes I think when people think about being happy, they think about kind of a really like uplifting, energizing type experience.
Yeah.
Maybe more what someone might be more akin to joy than
Right.
happy.
Right.
But people, when they say, why can't it, they actually use the word happy, not joy. So just parsing through these things, I think is interesting.
I have to agree with you. I think when people talk about happy, they're usually talking about a more polarized experience. When people bring up the word joy, they're usually actually talking about more contentment, satisfaction, and kind of this underlying feeling, no matter what's going on, of
Mm,
contentment. So yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So another definition is fortunate and convenient. Like in the sentence, like the example sentence is something like he had the happy knack of making people like him.
Okay,
Okay, so I
sure.
thought that was interesting. And then another one was inclined to use a specific thing excessively or at random, like our litigation happy society is the
Oh,
right. So
that's
it's like we're
kind of
throwing happy
interesting.
into something that means
Excessively.
excessive. So that's more like an informal
Yeah.
kind of use of it, but it was in there, so I thought I'd toss it in.
That's funny. I kind of like that one. Hmm. You know, your definitions are reminding me, I don't remember what book I was reading, but the introduction started out about how our society is founded on the pursuit of happiness.
Oh yeah,
Not the state of happiness, but the
Pursuit
pursuit.
of Happiness. There's actually a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness.
Great movie.
Right? Yeah.
The one with Will Smith.
Yeah, with Smith. So it
Great
was based on a
movie.
true story, right?
Right,
So it
right,
was
right.
all,
Yeah, but my point is like setting ourselves up for the, again, expectation. I think expectation has a lot to do with this conversation. The expectation of my job is to pursue happiness like it's somewhere out there, like I've got to get to it. And also, if we're going to wake up every day and pursue happiness, we're never going to get there. So there's this dissatisfaction and lack of contentment and never getting there kind of idea
right. Yeah.
that for US societies anyway is kind of impaired with our whole culture.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. The whole idea of that pursuing happiness, which again is disconnected from the idea of contentment
Yeah,
or achievement if we're in the process of pursuing, which puts us on that on a treadmill.
right.
And then we
You're
ask
never
our
going to get
question,
there.
why am I never happy? So in some ways, is it possible to say that our culture is just set up around um, never being happy?
I think we've nailed it.
Right. So let's just say
So
there could just
so
be a
that's
cultural
one
kind of
reason
moray. So we asked why can't it be
why it's
happy?
hard.
One of the answers is that there's just an environment,
Yeah.
right? There's a cultural environment that's been built to not make happy possible.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on I haven't been to Europe very many times, but my trips to Europe and there's just such a different contentment specific is a specific word I would use to describe my experiences in Europe. And so for what you're saying, like US cultures, I think we are really set up to fail at this. Whereas when I've been in Europe, it's just easier to be content, which makes it easier to just be happy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So when I think about any kind of question like this around an emotional state that people are longing for, let's just say that, or people feel like they have a lack of sort of thing. My question, and this is whatever emotional state that someone is asking about. My first question is there an unconscious expectation,
There's that word again.
right? Again, is there an unconscious expectation that the outside world needs to show up a certain way in order for you to experience that emotional state more regularly,
Well,
right?
I would say definitely, especially because so many people believe that their emotions are created by external environments. And I'm saying this because, as you know, this year I've been doing talks for the International Coaching Federation, so all around the US, and I'll ask people about emotions and what they are. And time again, we get a number of participants who will tell us that that is how what emotions are. It's a reaction to external stimuli, and they're created because of external stimuli. So that's definitely how a lot of people are still operating, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we just dial into happiness then and say, if I were to ask you, is your happiness dependent on what happens outside of you?
And
Is your happiness dependent on what's happening in your family? Is your happiness dependent on what's happening in your work? Is your happiness dependent on what's happening in your community or the world or wherever? Just kind of asking that question.
well, and maybe even going a step deeper with that and saying something like, when does your happiness feel like it's dependent on the outside world? Because I think it's really easy to go, no, I get that. My happiness isn't dependent on the external, it's dependent on me. But then when the stuff hits the fan and we're, in our kitchens, in our businesses, in our lives, and stuff happens, it's harder to say like, wow, no, because it's definitely happening in me because of that thing that happened outside.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you say, Ani, is maybe as a self-exploratory experience, is notice when things happen in the outside world that activate for you what you would consider not happy.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy. You actually might even say, I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy about that.
That would be a
And
great
so that is actually an indication
exercise.
that that thing that unconsciously you are attached to that thing being a certain way
You're
in order to
to that
make
thing
you
being a certain
happy,
way. Yeah.
and that you can't be happy until that thing's a certain way,
Right.
right? And so that sets up a very impossible dynamic. It's actually impossible. It actually puts us back in that victim triangle that we talked about many podcasts ago.
Right. And some people don't even want to do an exercise like that because they think as soon as they start concentrating on that, that's what they're going to reproduce is more unhappiness. But the way it actually works is you're using your conscious mind to look at what's going on in your subconscious mind when you do an exercise like that. It's actually an awareness building
Yeah.
exercise. So our conscious mind is only about 5% of our mind power. So to use our conscious mind to do an exercise like that helps us to look at our subconscious, to rewire our subconscious. And I think that's a big misnomer that people have about awareness building exercises because they think, oh my gosh, if I do that, then I'm going to start to manifest,
Yeah.
what I don't want. You're already manifesting what you don't want. So
Yeah.
let's,
And a lot of it's being driven from your unconscious. And to
yeah,
Connie's point, you're not aware of it because consciously you're not aware of it.
right.
The great thing about that exercise too is once you become then consciously aware about what it is that you are unconsciously attached to help you be happy, then you can ask yourself, well, what belief do I have that is holding that attachment in place?
Exactly.
Right? Because then you can
Exactly.
actually start to work on that belief,
And then you're rewiring
and
your
then you're rewiring
subconscious.
your subconscious, right? And that's how you let go of that attachment.
Right. So one of the beliefs that I see come up a lot with people, and some kind of, we could find different disguises for this belief, Brian, but is the idea that life is really one-sided. Like,
Yep.
and I think it shows up masqueraded most of the time in this way. Having a feeling that I can do the good thing or the right thing or the wrong thing, thinking I am good and bad, or you're good or bad, and having good, bad, right, wrong kinds of positive, negative kinds of conversations in my head or out loud with other people is a really good indicator that your subconscious is set up with a belief that life could be one sided.
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is, or the question we could ask people is, are you attached to one-sided emotion, like one-sided emotionalness?
Yeah,
Like, are you striving for the happy without the sad? Are you
right.
striving for the joy without the hate? Are you striving for the name the other two other opposite ones,
Right. So
the
yes,
gratitude, not the anger, or something like that.
exactly. And I think two ways you can know that that's probably a pattern for you is when you have a lot of good, bad, right, wrong kinds of thinking and
Mhm.
speaking that comes out of your mouth. The other thing is when you really believe that there are certain emotional states that are good, bad, right,
Yeah,
wrong.
exactly.
Because we've had many clients and students stop us in the middle of a session or the middle of a class and really not understand. But anger's bad, isn't it? But I don't want to be sad. Sadness isn't good, is it? And it's really baffling. And that right there is an awareness building
Yeah.
opportunity to recognize that you're coming from a belief system where there's a one-sided reality.
Yeah. And so this is where somatic coaching skills actually really shine a lot because when we have that conversation about when someone says, is sadness bad or isn't anger bad? And I want the opposite, I want the happy, I want the joy. We can intellectualize that all day long. And people on an intellectual basis actually won't be able to depolarize that until they experience it somatically, right? Because we have
Right.
all these defenses against it, and we end up using our intellect to defend against or not understand. We may understand the concept. Oh, yeah, we all are human. We all have emotions. We all have emotions. But then we experience it. We fight, really fight against the emotional experiences that we say we don't want. But when we learn somatic coaching skills and practices, and you actually go into the body and you work with the sensations that are at the root of the emotions, you realize that there's no judgment around sensation.
Right. So I'll go deeper into what you're saying. It's not just somatic skills, it's sensation based
Yes, exactly.
somatic
Yep.
skills like we teach and do here at the Academy, because you could be following other people who do somatic work and being in alignment with, and there's plenty of somatic work that goes into the alignment of ideas like you shouldn't do it unless it's a hell yes. That's polarized kind of ideology that can, especially when you don't understand, well, especially when you have a belief system that life should show up in one direction or the other, you're going to run towards ideology like that. Well,
Right.
I'm looking for the hell yes, and it's not a hell yes. I remember a client I had one time years ago who was a mindset coach, and she taught the if it's not a hell yes kind of ideology, and she was coming to me because life wasn't always showing up for her as a hell yes and she didn't know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was really fun. So that's the sensation
Yeah.
based methodology that allows you to embody both sides so that you can start to understand and believe that life is always showing up for me actually, and when it shows up for me, it's not that I'm going to be happy about it all the time. I'm a human. I have emotions.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm a human who has emotions.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing though, too, is what my experience is the deeper sensation based work that you do when you go under the deeper than the emotions, because the way we talk about it is that emotions are sensations plus thoughts or sensations plus a story.
Right.
And so as soon as someone says, I'm sad, then automatically there's a story that goes along with that. When someone says, I'm
Yes.
angry, there's a story that goes along with that. And when we try to work, overtly intellectually with emotions, what we end up doing is just getting all tangled up in the story. It's like
Yes.
cotton candy in there. We just get so sticky and caught. So when we do the sensation work, and a lot of people don't realize that a person can learn to consciously shift their sensory state.
Yeah.
And when you can learn to consciously shift your sensory state, on one hand, you can actually shift to experience whatever it is that you want to experience because you're actually shifting the raw data of the experience. You can actually create any emotion that you want on demand, that regard.
Right.
But the other thing that happens when you do the sensory work on either your point around polarized or one-sidedness is when you expand your sensation-based repertoire, right? Your sensation-based experience. When you widen, some people might talk about it as widening their emotional range.
Hmm.
It's really what we talk about is widening your sensory window. When you widen your capacities for your sensory window to get larger, that's when those polarized good, bad emotions that people talk about actually all turn into one experience
Mm-hmm.
because that widening window encapsulates the whole person's experience then. And then we realize there's territory within that we can navigate consciously. And then we're not so attached to any particular feeling. And at the same time, we can create whatever feeling that we want. And then we're like, oh, we're actually living in a whole other kind of sphere of experience at that point.
Yeah. One of the reasons this works from a neuroscience standpoint is because the brain operates on the summaries that it gets from our bodily experiences. The brain couldn't possibly process all of the information that's going on in the body. So the body sends summaries of information up to the brain, and then the brain figures out what to do. And when we're operating from a framework where we're going to talk about our emotional states, we're actually helping the brain to lock in those summaries that, like you were saying, have all those stories attached to them. But as soon as you start to deconstruct those summaries and instead using your conscious mind, help your brain to get more data than just the summarized, I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm sad. You're giving your brain more data to be able to solve problems with. And the next thing you know, you're not going to be putting your experiences in those boxes of emotions anymore. And you're going to have much more range.
Yeah.
That's actually how you develop more emotional range,
Right.
is based on the capacity to develop more sensory range.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. That's very well said. I love that. So when we come back to that question of, why is it so hard to be happy? I think what we've talked about so far as well, there's certainly environmental circumstances, our beliefs, our attachments to the way we think things should be, our physiological processes. Do we have a wide enough sensory range to experience life fully in the way that we want to experience it? And maybe even striving for something like happy is setting us up for failure, is what we talked about too.
Yeah.
One of the phrases that I've really adopted into my life and I live from every single day. I think about this phrase. I would have to say pretty much every single day when I practice. It comes out of qigong, tai chi, traditional Chinese medicine. And when you practice, and we teach this in our core centering training, this idea that when you do these core centering practices on a regular basis, there's really no like goal. Like some people might say, "Oh, I want to become enlightened," and that could be a goal for people. It's really like a direction that we head, and on that direction of becoming more of a what the Taoists would call a real person, or some people would call an enlightened human, or whatever it is. There's benchmarks along the way, and one of the benchmarks is to begin experiencing what they call cheerful indifference. Cheerful
It's a
indifference.
great
And I
phrase.
love that phrase. And to me, that's what I practice embodying more than happiness, because there's a sense of cheerfulness, which kind of lends itself to an idea of happiness, but
Yeah.
there's also part of indifference with it. So along with that phrase is I'm disconnecting from the external circumstances that might influence how I feel internally.
Right. And all those
So
attachments.
yeah, it's just a matter
Right.
of being cheerful. It's practicing being cheerful while at the same time letting go of the external circumstances.
Yeah, I think very often about the Zen proverb about good luck, bad luck
Mm,
being mixed up.
mm,
And the Tao Te Ching talks about this, about how opposites define each other. And in terms of happiness, which is not something I really strive for. I was going to say I strive more for contentment, but I don't think I strive for contentment. I just appreciate it when it's around.
yeah.
But when things come up that are challenging, I will think to myself all the time, good luck, bad luck, who knows? Or like remember the Taoist way of thinking that opposites define each other. And like I'm sure there's something really good waiting for me on the other side of this. And I might feel things on my way there. And of course I would. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
And I think for the two of us, Ani, and certainly the clients that I've worked with and students that I've worked with as well, we can say that intellectually, that we can make those adjustments on the fly. And I really know that that's because we've done the somatic work. Right?
100%.
Because if you have not cleaned it up somatically, then it's almost impossible to make those changes intellectually on the fly.
Said this
But if
just this weekend something happened. I don't remember what it was, and I did some cross mapping, and then I was good, and I sent a note out to our virtual community and said, I don't know how anyone survives life
Yeah,
without
right.
cross
Yeah.
mapping. But the reason that we can, sit here and feel good about what we're talking about and really embody the work is because we have practiced the somatic tools so much that
Yeah.
it's just on repeat, rinse and repeat, to be able to make these transformations within ourselves anytime we want.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know
And I think people get kind of addicted to listening to podcasts, and keep listening to the podcast. We want you here. But people get addicted to listening to podcasts and then intellectually kind of circulating this stuff, and then still being at a loss for integration or realization
really how to do it.
of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's really because you haven't yet done the somatic work. I'm not saying you haven't done the somatic work,
No, no, no.
but when you go in and you do the somatic work, when you really clean it up in your physiology from this sensation base, then it makes these on the fly adjustments like routine.
And what were you saying about, having done or not doing the somatic work? Most of our students and clients are people who've done a tremendous amount of work on the way to us. And I always feel like all of the work that's been done is in preparation for them to be able to receive this work really completely and deeply.
Yeah.
So I think that for myself, when I learn new things, and sometimes I'll hear my brain going, God, I should have gotten it earlier. No, everything I did on the way here helped to set me up to be a person who can really absorb it completely and integrate it. So,
Yeah.
so I hope that this podcast spoke to you. And I also hope you share it with somebody like a friend or a sister or brother or mom or dad or something who struggles with this stuff, because I really believe that these kinds of conversations can open our awareness for each other about how there's actually a better feeling way to live.
Yeah.
And we can get there, especially together when we help each other there. So if there's somebody who needs to hear this podcast, send it along to them too, so that they can hear the info.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember to leave a Google review too, or a podcast review.
Spotify,
Spotify or
Apple.
Apple, whatever kind of review it is from the podcast, because then it helps other people say, oh, wow, that would actually be a really great episode for me to listen to.
Or maybe I should give this a shot. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Yep. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.